Peter Gibson, Conservative MP for Darlington, elected at that last election. Your mum was an NHS midwife. Your dad worked as a shipwright at Smith's Dock. You grew up in the North East. Were you always sure you were a Conservative?
Well, I'm from the North East, born, raised, educated, ran my business in the North East, deeply, deeply passionate about everything to do with the North East. And that was my motivation for getting involved in politics. I felt that the North East had a great deal to offer, but I came from the land of Mandelson, Morlham, Milburn. And when I look around the North East and I look for those signs of what they'd actually brought to our region, they're very sadly lacking. And that was my motivation for getting involved in politics. Family friends stood for the council when I was 10, and I got involved delivering leaflets, number catching at polling stations, and kind of got the bug. Visited Parliament when I was 16, and that lifelong ambition fulfilled.
You entered into a civil partnership with your partner, Gareth Dad, in 2008.
Yeah.
Any plans to marry?
So Gareth and I have both been on a very long political journey together. We met at the Young Conservatives, and our civil partnership in 2008 was a fantastic celebration with friends from around the country, many friends inside the Conservative Party. Our respective witnesses at the time were my mum and his mum. Sadly, my mum's no longer with us, and we've always had the ambition that one day we will convert our civil partnership into a marriage, and it's just finding the right time in our own lives to do that. And so the discussion that's been going on in respect of what the Church of England is doing or considering doing has been quite relevant to us.
You're a Christian?
Yes. I'm a Roman Catholic, raised a Roman Catholic. Gareth's a confirmed member of the Church of England.
And you have criticised the Church of England's continued refusal to hold same-sex marriages. You said the Church's two-tier system on relationships labels gay people as second-class citizens. Tell me why this is something that you're campaigning on.
Well, the discussion that the Church was having with regards to allowing same-sex marriage to happen in England contrasts with the situation in Wales and in Scotland, where those things are able to happen. And you just have to look at how the Church treats its own clergy in respect of civil partnerships and gay marriages and the advice that it gives to them. So this is about equality and fairness and trying to eliminate those discrepancies in its stance.
How are you going to do that?
Well, we continue to raise the issue in Parliament, and fundamentally the law is such that at this point in time there is a bar in the legislation that prevents the Church of England from conducting those. So Parliament could actually pass legislation to remove that bar, putting the responsibility firmly back in the Synod's camp. But I welcome the fact that the blessings are now going to start happening. We're on a journey. If I take us back to pre-2005, gay people couldn't even enter into a civil partnership. So we've come on an awful long journey, and I think the Church is on that journey too, but at a much slower pace.
Do you think Parliament should legislate?
I think Parliament should remove any barriers that exist in law to the Church being able to do it. I think it's a decision for the Church,
right.
But I think legislation that exists in Parliament that prevents them from doing it should be removed.
Okay. Something else you're campaigning on is to press the government to ban conversion therapy. Just explain what conversion therapy is.
Well, conversion therapy takes a number of forms in different parts of the world. There's been some studies done. Some countries have already legislated for it. And what it is basically a system of coercion and control. I call it abuse, basically trying to tell gay people, convert gay people from being gay into being heterosexual.
And also people who are transgender to not being transgender.
Yeah.
Why is this campaign important to you?
This, to me, is about the freedom of an individual to be who they are, and the mistruth, the lie that somebody can be converted from something that they already are. I intrinsically know that I'm a gay man, and the thought of being subjected to some treatment that would change me is just utterly crackers. It cannot be done. And so I think that abuse, and when you read those stories of coercion and control, be it in a religious setting, a medical setting, or indeed in a family setting, it's something that I really passionately believe that we should do so. We've done a whole host of things about protecting individuals, women and girls, upskirting, female genital mutilation, domestic abuse. To my mind, banning conversion therapy sits fully within that scope of those protections that Parliament brings in to look after people.
When did you realise you were gay?
That's a really difficult question. I think you know, as a teenager, you grow up and you feel that you're different. You feel that you're the only one. I think the world is very different now, you know, from being a teenager when I was in the late 80s, early 1990s. So I didn't actually come out until I was 21. So it's quite late compared to people who come out now much earlier. I was at an event last night and I met a guy who was 57 and he'd only come out 5 years ago. He'd waited till he was 52. And that's just the scale of the change that we've been on as a society. And I want everybody to be able to be themselves and be open.
Some accuse the government of dragging their feet. They say that they're going to ban conversion therapy. They haven't. Do you think the criticisms of the government dragging their feet are fair?
Well, I think we need to sort of segregate out who's doing what at what stages, and I think it's been a difficult journey. You know, being involved in politics, you see things on the inside as well as the public perception. And I think if I was sitting on the outside, I'd say nothing's happened, nothing's changed. When's it happening? I know from the work that I've done, people like Elliot Colburn and Alicia Cairns and the work that we've done engaging with ministers and raising this at every level, that work is ongoing. It's not an easy thing to do. If it was easy, we would have done it, but it's a complex issue, and I think it gets mixed up with the whole discussion about trans rights as well, and I think that confuses the picture about what conversion therapy or conversion practices ban is all about.
The Education Secretary Michelle Donnellan said earlier this year that the government will now carry out work to ensure any new laws do not, I quote, inadvertently criminalise parents or clinicians having legitimate conversations with young people who are experiencing distress because of their gender identity. Does that sound any alarm bells to you?
No, not particularly. I don't want a situation where people are forced down one route or another, and I think it's perfectly right and appropriate for, if we take the issue of a trans person, having a legitimate exploration in a medical setting about what is absolutely appropriate for them is absolutely right. But conversion practices are about a predetermined outcome. Having a legitimate conversation about whether you are gay or trans, exploring your sexuality and your gender identity is a perfectly valid thing for a family or a medical practitioner to have. So that doesn't ring any particular alarm bells to me. This is really complex and we've got to get it right and we've got to protect people. But we've got to protect people from being forced one way or the other. It's about their self-determination.
Do you think a law to ban conversion therapy will be on the books, if you like, by the time of the next election?
I very much hope so.
And just to, you refer to the trans debate and that this can sometimes get tied up in a toxic debate. How do you detoxify that trans debate? Should we be trying to detoxify the debate on trans people?
I think Twitter's a very unhelpful forum for having a very nuanced intellectual debate about things. When I meet trans people and I hear their stories, I have nothing but sympathy and empathy for the immense challenges that they face in life. Far greater, I believe, than the challenges that I faced as a gay man. And when I talk to women who have challenges about this discussion, they come across to me as being genuinely sympathetic and understanding, but it's how we square those two circles and how we deal with those issues about at what age it's right for people to undergo the transition.
Do you have a view on that?
I'm open to discussion in respect of it. I think we have, the press and the media, I think, inflame the discussion about issues inside our prisons and women's refuges and changing rooms, all of which I think can be adequately dealt with and resolved.
Although we've just had a very bad case in a prison.
We have. But it's highlighted the debate, I think, and certainly the British government's been clear that they will deal with that based on birth gender and risk-based assessment, which I think is the appropriate thing to do.
Covered a lot of ground, and I've really enjoyed meeting you.
I've enjoyed meeting you. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter Gibson.